time has come. You must continue your journey without me.
What are you... What? Master! You can't leave me!
You must believe.
Master!
Well, we've made it to the end. And I think we can all agree that the Amazing Digital Circus has had a good run. And I can't believe that it's over. So, to celebrate, and by celebrate I mean cope, with the end of the Amazing Digital Circus, I will be designing the rest of the human cast as Almagons. I've recently made a whole lore video about them that you could go watch for more information, but all you really need to know is they're a fluffy dragon species that have fur colors that dictate what element they possess, and those elements are ice, fire, electric, and poison. Like in the previous video, I will try to make these designs Almagon accurate, meaning that if you were to see these designed in any media that would have Almagons in it, they would blend in and make sense. But I also want them to look like the characters that they're based on. Also, as I draw each of the Almagons, I'll be sharing my overall thoughts on each of the characters. Also, I should mention that I have seen the last episode of the Amazing Digital Circus in theaters, but don't worry, there won't be any spoilers in this video. Like, no, seriously, I can't spoil it. Like, physically, I can't. When me and my friends went to go see the movie, they slapped these microchip stickers on our forehead and told us they would short-circuit our brain if we uttered even a minor spoiler before the end of June. I really wish that guy who sat behind us listened before he posted a spoiler on Twitter.
I don't need your help, I don't need anybody's help. I'll be just fine.
So yeah, no spoilers in this video. Let's get started. First up is Gangle, the living embodiment of the starving artist trope that I'm sure all us fellow artists can relate to nowadays. So I've seen a lot of people say that Gangle is perhaps the most basic of the human characters in Digital Circus, down to the personality and design. Well, I do kind of agree with that. I don't think it makes her a bad character. I still find her to be incredibly relatable and engaging enough to stand out on her own. Like her, I struggled for a while to find my footing in the art world, especially with, well, everything that's going on in the job market. Plus, I've had my fair share of crappy part-time jobs like she did. I can still hear the sound of me stepping in frozen yogurt. Anyways, Gangle is pretty straightforward. Since her ribbons are red, she's obviously a fire Almagon. The main thing that I wanted to do with her design is to have her stripes on her bodies sort of look like ribbons, and for her face to be white to match her mask. For the stripes, I was going to have them wrap around her legs, but I felt like it didn't look quite right, so I just made them really thin, which hopefully makes them have a more ribbony feel. And for her face, I was going to make her whole face white, but I felt it was too bright compared to the darker red of her body, so I decided to add red on top of her muzzle to break it up. I also added white to her paws, wings, belly, and tail to have it flow through the design more, as it would be too distracting if it was just on her face. I also added a teardrop shape by her eyes to match her mask. We usually see her without her comedy mask, so I thought it would be fitting. And that is Gangle, whose Almagon name shall be Shatterflame. And next up, we go from the most basic design to the most complex, everyone's favorite mishmash pick-em-up toy, Zooble. Of the 6 humans, I would say that Zooble is the most level-headed and mature of the group, despite their cold and somewhat vulgar demeanor, especially towards Kate and Jax, though probably towards Jax as it's deserved. And even though Ragatha is considered the most optimistic mom friend of the group, I would argue that Zooble would be the one that I'd want to go to the most for sage advice if I'm stuck in a rut, especially with how much they struggle with accepting themselves. Now for their design, Zooble is a mishmash of shapes and parts that get switched out each episode, and I wasn't sure how I was gonna make that into an Almagon at first, which is why they weren't in the first video. My first thought was to make them a fire Almagon with a lot of reds and orange to kind of have the same look, since fire Almagons tend to have the most color variations. But that didn't really feel Zooble. After thinking about it some more, I had another thought. What if I just made them a mismatch of different kinds of Elmagons? So that's what I went with. For their body, I kept it simple, save for the fact that they have two different kinds of horns. One is supposed to be standing up straight and the other is curved back, as well as both having a different kind of texture. For their eyes, I copied Zooble from the show and gave only one of them a set of eyelashes. I also added a fur tuft to one of their ears, trying to keep them mismatched. Next were the colors, which gave me the most issues. You could see I started with more saturated colors. First, I tried to make each of their body parts look like a different kind of element. A blue wing, a green and yellow wing, a purple leg, etc. I wasn't sure how I was feeling about it, and when I showed it to my husband, he suggested I use colors directly from Zooble's design. So I switched to using their main body color in their show design, which caused me to make the color palette more saturated. I also kept the stripes in the body round to match the polka dots in their design. Overall, I have mixed feelings on this design. It was certainly a step out of my comfort zone, as I don't usually use this many colors in a design. Of course, that's what you get with such a wackily designed character like Zooble, who shall be known as Everwing. If you've enjoyed what you've seen this far, why not subscribe and hit that like button? I have more art challenges planned, so stick around to see what I have in store. Last, but certainly not least, is Kinger. And if Ragatha is the mom friend, then Kinger's gotta be the dad friend. I think most of us knew that Kinger was more important to the overall story than we initially thought. And even though I wasn't surprised that he was revealed to be one of Kane's creators alongside Scratch, he's still an incredibly well-written character who has so many quotable moments, and like Zooble, some very sage advice. Well, as long as he's somewhere dark. Speaking of Zooble, Kinger's design was much simpler to work with. Since he wears a purple robe, Kinger shall be a poison Elbagon. I wanted him to look a bit scruffy, like he doesn't take care of himself super well. Spending so much time in a dark pillow fort probably doesn't do wonders for your appearance. Though, in the end, he mostly just turned out to look super fluffy, which I don't entirely mind. I had his horns curve outwards because I felt like it would somewhat mimic the cross on his head, though I also did just put the same cross on his forehead in his Elmagon design. I also added spots to his face to match the spots on his robe collar, and overall kept it pretty simple. He was probably the easiest out of the 3 designs I did for this video, and probably also my favorite, and his Elmagon name shall be Monarch Fang. And those were my designs for the Amazing Digital Circus. But before we put an end to this video, I wanted to take this moment at the end to talk about why I like the show, and what it has meant to me personally. The Amazing Digital Circus came out in October of 2023. And around that time, I had just graduated college with a degree in graphic design. And it was also around the time AI became a thing, and all those graphic design jobs I was promised were just gone. I had heard of the Amazing Digital Circus before the pilot, and admittedly, I didn't really like any of the teasers that they had posted. I didn't think they did a good job of showing what the show was going to be about, but I did really like the pilot when that came out. Though I don't think it holds up as well now, I do appreciate it for what it is. The Amazing Digital Circus is a very human and personal show. It has themes of identity, which I have personally struggled with sometimes, though not entirely the same way that the characters in the show have. Watching this series come out was spectacular, and I don't think there was an episode that I didn't like. As the world was filled with more and more inhuman AI slop, it was really nice to come back to the series with its very human and personal touches. I'm sad to see it go, but I'm glad that it exists, and I'm so glad to see what Glitch has prepared next. As my husband would say, don't be sad that it's over, be glad that it happened at all.